evening. This is Face the Nation. We're coming to you live from our Stein studio complex here in Ratmalana. I'm Sonali Wanigabadage. Now, the political drama unfolding before our very eyes can be likened to a melodramatic love story of sorts. Politicians making up, breaking up, and making up once again. Now, this cycle repeats itself to the detriment of the country and its people. Now, this drama is being played to the gallery. Isn't the time right for the people of Sri Lanka to quit watching this drama, remove the blinders, and look at what is happening to their lives as a result of this political drama? Now, in the current political setup, currently there's talk of a caretaker government on the one hand, there's disunity among the SLFP and the UNP on the other hand, there's division within the joint opposition, there's discord among politics in the north and east. All this while there are serious issues with regard to economic stability, with regard to the rule of law, the sustainability of democracy. So to discuss the implications of these issues, we've invited to our studios three guests. We are joined by Professor Rajiva Vijay Singh, former MP, former leader of the Liberal Party. Good evening to you, Professor. It's good to have you on our show after quite some time. We are also joined by Mr. V. Anand Sangari, former MP and leader of the TULF, joining us for the first time. Good evening to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And finally, Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, MP representing the Janatha Vimukti Peramuna. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Now, amidst the social, economic and political crises, where is Sri Lanka headed? Is there a shining light at the end of this tunnel? And this, Mr. Ananda Sangari, is my first question to you.
What is that question?
Amidst the social, economic and political crisis, where is Sri Lanka headed? Is there a light at the end of this tunnel?
You know, we are facing a big crisis, both in the political field and the economic field. There is no doubt about it. I don't think anybody is taking this matter seriously and trying to find a solution. They are only interested in developing themselves and making the opposition more secure, forgetting the country's needs and the people's needs. That is my view.
When we take the reconciliation dialogue in Sri Lanka, we've seen various initiatives being proposed by the government. We've seen them implemented as well. With 2015, with the change in government, with the good governance government coming into the picture, we saw several positive measures being taken, including the Office on Missing Persons Act being brought in. We see the reparations bill now forming law. Lands being released to the people of this country, which were previously held by state officials, the military. In your opinion, is enough being done with regard to national unity and reconciliation? If not, what are the key areas which the government needs to focus on?
As I told earlier, no one seemed to be interested in solving the problem immediately. Now it's more than 9 years now since the war came to an end. Most of the problems are still remain unsolved, still. And no one seems to be talking about it also. And the importance that should be given to certain matters, you see, have been completely ignored. The country is starving. I know I come from a very poor electorate, one of the poorest in the country, as I am told. People are begging for a living. That's a place now where I didn't see a single beggar, except one old gentleman who used to come and collect 1 rupee on every Friday. I didn't see a single beggar during the time I was member of parliament. Now you just look at the people through the window, you will see women carrying children going begging. The children who should be in school today go on begging. What is the use in building up schools or providing more and more facilities you see for schools in the town areas. And the children must be fed. Children must have a good meal, to go to, and fit enough to attend school. That is the main problem the country is in. Poverty is the main.
So poverty alleviation is
Yes.
one of the concerns that you're raising. Okay. Do you think that the international community is interfering in domestic affairs? How do you view Sri Lanka's relationship with the international community?
Yeah, we can't expect the international community to know or study our problems and find solutions. There are certain problems that can be solved easily. The government has enough money. It has enough money. I had been agitating for the last so many years. Every time I get an opportunity, I don't fail to mention that the government should reintroduce the rationing of food items. At least people who are below a certain income limit. That should be done. And unfortunately today, more people are starving. Even if you take me, a person like me, what are the means we have for a square meal a day? I eat a humble meal every day. I am not ashamed to say that, because that's all I can afford. Then I compare myself with an ordinary man who is on the street begging. The government should first of all keep aside everything and find a solution to see that not a single person starves even for a day. That should be the first main item. In fact, I had been repeatedly asking, even when I was in Parliament earlier, even afterwards, whenever I got an opportunity, I didn't fail to say that the government must reintroduce the ration scheme, at least in respect of the food items.
Thank you very much, Mr. V. Ananda Sangari, leader of the TULF and former MP. My next question is to Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, representing the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. Dr. Jayatissa, you qualified as a medical doctor. However, you give up your medical practice to do politics. How rewarding has that been so far?
Actually, it's very much controversial challenge to me, because no one can understand why I came into politics. But personally, I think that yes, if I would have been a doctor, I can do something for the people. But we have to do a lot of changes in this economic, social, cultural, as well as in every sector. So that's why I dedicated my medical career and joined to the politics in 2007, just after I finished my internship. Then I was elected to the Provincial Council member of Western Province for 2 terms. Then I joined, then elected to the Parliament in 2015 first time.
Any regrets so far?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yes,
great.
I'm very happy with.
Good to be positive.
Yes.
As the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, which has been a party that has been very critical and vocal against successive governments, how do you view the current state of affairs in the country?
Yes, actually, what you said early at this inception, it's very correct that we are watching a political drama, because this government as well as the joint opposition, they never talk about the problems of the people, real problems of the economy as well as this social system. We always talking about the internal crisis of the government, disputes among President and the Prime Minister, disputes among ministers, and who will be the presidential candidate of the joint government, joint opposition, like that. But we are in a real problem of the special economic crisis. You see, we are facing a very severe debt, nearly 13,000 billion Sri Lankan rupees. It's a heavy, severe burden to the country. Then, when we consider our import-export deficit, it's severely increasing. Now we have only nearly $10 billion export income, but our import spending is nearly 20 billion US dollars. So it's double the gap. And only when we consider the revenue income, the national revenue, it shows only 11% of the GDP. It's a real problem. And at the moment, we share 1 in 2,000 of the world market. In 1978, we received in 1 in 200. And the other one is the income sharing imbalance. So all this burden is facing by the people. So we don't see any permanent solution from the government side, especially
Right.
with the...
Okay, Doctor, now the JVP brought in the, as a private member bill, the 20th Amendment to the Constitution to abolish the executive presidency. Now, this is a carrot that has been before the people before as well. Chandrika Kumaratunga, Mahinda Rajapaksa, all spoke about this,
Yes.
but this didn't really happen. Do you think this is a feasible idea? And what are you saying? Are you saying that the power then needs to be vested in a prime minister? What exactly is your stance on this?
No, we stand for the parliament democracy. We want to strengthen the parliament system.
Sure, but is this feasible?
The feasibility depends on the composition of the parliament as well as the thinking pattern of the people. But as a political party, we firmly stand on to abolish the executive presidency. We believe that the collecting such a huge power by one person who is not cultured to maintain a good political system in the country, it's very dangerous. Since 1978, we have seen what happens with this executive presidency. And we have to remind that in 1994, in 2005, as well as 2015, we got the remarkable mandate from the people to abolish the executive presidency. So that fault is not with the people, but who took the mandate from the people is they are not willing to abolish it. So
you're confident of getting this passed in Parliament, is it?
You see that judgment of the Supreme Court, they ordered to go for the referendum. Yes, we are for referendum, we like it. But that's why we said, please don't block in the Parliament, allow this 20th Amendment to decide by the people. So we believe that if we go to the, we can go to the referendum, definitely people, they are in the side of to abolish the executive presidency.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Nalinda Jayatesa, MP representing the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. My final question in the opening round is to Professor Rajiva Vijay Singha, former MP, former leader of the Liberal Party, and academic as well. Professor, what are your thoughts on this political drama which is unfolding to the detriment of the people of this country?
Well, whenever people ask me what my stance is in the last few months, I've said there's no point having a stance. There's no point engaging in analysis for the simple reason that everything changes every day. I think you mentioned a bit of this in your introduction, that everyone is changing all the time. And I think one of the reasons for this is that there is a complete lack of responsibility. In a sense, in the past, whoever was the leader was responsible. At the moment, you have a diarchy. And, it is very clear that no one can take full responsibility. And part of the problem is, of course, the confusion about what I might call a mandate. Now, added to this is the very simple fact that we have lost the capacity to conceptualize. Politicians don't really think anymore. For instance, let us look at some very simple facts. What Dr. Jayathiksha said was repeated today by Mr. Vijay Vardhana, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, about the lack of productivity in our economy. Had a lovely article in the Colombo Telegraph today, I'm sure it appeared elsewhere as well, about how, we're trying to develop an economy without concentrating on production. Where do you get production? Industry. Now, it's very, very, symptomatic that for the last 8 years, we have had a Minister of Industries who is quite incapable of conceptualization. I refer to Rishad Badiuddin. And, when I chaired the TVC, we set up some councils and we've asked, of industrialists, or rather of the stakeholders, people who would hire people. And they were really very impressive. The Construction Council, the Manufacturing Council, the Tourism Council, the IT Council. And they were all at a loss because there's no government policy. The industrial people said they could work out concepts with regard to what they call repairs. The aspect of engineering that kept machinery going. But they said, how can we do it with industry? There's no policy. Today we asked to manufacture, tomorrow tariffs are reduced, imports flood in, we're bankrupted. Now this is absolutely remarkable. And I think underlying it is the sheer incapacity of this government to think. So you have ad hoc responses. I don't know whether you saw recently, Mangala Samarira says that if he'd been finance minister in 2015, they wouldn't have given all those handouts. The way they talk about the fuel, the formula, is just quite astonishing. The finance minister whose ministry it came from says, I don't understand it. The Prime Minister says today, no point talking about it. No one has made it quite clear that while they blame escalating fuel costs, there is also a massive cost because of overheads. The Petroleum Corporation is overstaffed. But there is absolutely no attempt to cut government spending. And instead what you find are so-called legislators at every level. Parliament, Provincial Council, the municipal councils and the Pradesh Sabhas are voting themselves more and more perks. And no one cares. And no one is prepared to say it because today, even more than ever before, there is sheer terror about the power of these elected representatives who are supposed to be legislators, but who are only seen as voting for them. So unless you keep them happy, they won't vote for you. They in turn simply want to perpetuate themselves. For instance, when, this really appalling mayor, Rosie Senanayake, decided to, more than double the allowance. And I think one very principled person in the opposition said, we shouldn't do this. Someone in the opposition said, no, we need all this money because we have to go to funerals and weddings. Is that the focus? Are we going to pay them allowances to go and make themselves popular in order to be elected the next time? But that's all they think of. The biggest problem that this country faces is the Maithripala Sirisena Ranil Wickremesinghe government, instead of fulfilling their promises, started from day one of their government to think about the next election. So Ranil engaged in the bond scam to make money for the party so that he could run the election and pay off the debts. Maithripala Sirisena, having first left everything in the hands of Ranil and Chandrika, suddenly realized that Chandrika wasn't interested in the SLFP and she was in fact telling people who want to join the SLFP to join the UNP instead. But of course his efforts to resurrect the SLFP are vitiated by the fact that he's terrified of Mahinda Rajapaksa. And therefore, asai bhai, it keeps happening all the time. And he can't make up his mind. And meanwhile, the joint opposition also can't make up its mind. Because they want to first have the whole cake. Then they say, well, we might give you a bit, but in fact, if you have a bit of cake, you might treat it like a hopper and, renege on us. So there's chaos. And underlying it is the absence of thought, the absence of planning.
And might I add, the absence of conscience for the most part. Thank you very much, Professor, for your opening remarks. Before opening the floor for questions from our journalists, one question to Mrs. Sangari. Now, this issue of the release of the so-called political prisoners has been making it to the headlines over the past so many years. It was included in the election manifesto of the Tamil National Alliance as well. However, this is an ongoing issue. People are actually victimized as a result of this issue. In your capacity as the leader of the TULF, as a senior politician, how do you view this, and what needs to be done to release these individuals or take necessary expeditious action to secure their release or rehabilitation? What needs to be done?
This is not an issue that is going on from 2009, the end of the war. It shows we are even much earlier. I have in my file a number of letters written to the then President asking for the release of some of those who had been kept in detention for indefinite periods. Now, since the war is over, 9 years back, by this time the government should have found a solution to this problem without leaving it to the people to decide. Unfortunately, now I will give you one instance. I went and saw these boys now who were fasting. And then they told me that from that morning they have stopped taking medicines and things like that. So I pleaded with them, please, for some more time, you try to exist till something is done. And in the meantime, there were other demonstrations, you see. Everyone has now become a leader and everyone wants to demonstrate for personal gains. But the problem is, it's a solution that can be found, a problem that can be found solutions very easily. Now if you go back to the PTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act, it was a temporary measure adopted at that time, temporary measure. So now 9 years after the war, I think the PTA has been more than 30 years in the legal field. What should have the government should have done this? The government should on its own, without leaving it to the people for agitation.
Yeah, but there is a proposed counter-terror law that is being discussed.
So may I
no,
just
here
comment on that?
is a group of people are starving. They are starving to death. So there is no time now for us to discuss politics, you see. Here, based on the PTA, if action had been taken on these boys now who are in detention for more than, say, 9, 10, 15, 20 years, if action had been taken promptly, by this time they would have served the sentence, you see, and during their sentence for good behavior, they would have got 2-3 weeks leave and went and saw their parents, children and parents, you see, on a short holiday.
So you're saying that the current government is also mishandling this issue?
Yeah, the government should take the responsibility for this reason. Why did they take so much of time to file action against it? If action had been taken promptly or within 1 or 2 years, by the time all these people would have come out.
Right. Yes, Professor.
Can I just say the solution is very simple, but it requires coordination. Let me say with great pride that we had a Ministry of Human Rights, and I was its secretary, and I would keep pointing out in terms of also the Human Rights Action Plan we are doing to government, that they should not detain people indefinitely. We used to get UN experts down at the time, and I used to keep enunciating either release them or charge them. It's not up to me to say whom to release. But let me be honest, until 2009, although I pointed this out, when I was told, well, we can't charge them because the evidence isn't clear, but we can't release them because they're potentially dangerous,
right,
I didn't argue. Because I could not myself take the responsibility saying release them and they turn into suicide bombers. But after May 2009, I did argue. And as a result of the pressures we put, Mahinda Rajapaksa as president appointed a committee which I chaired, which brought together the Attorney General's Department, the prisons officers, the police, and in those 3 months when I chaired that committee, we reduced the number from 4,000 to 2,000. I'm very proud of that. But, unfortunately, I went into Parliament. And it was a really useless exercise. I'm glad Dr. Jatesla is still very enthusiastic. But our Parliament is a joke because parliamentarians have no powers. Summed up in the idiotic book by Priyani Wijayasekara, who thought she was Secretary General, but was a rubber stamp, which actually wrote a book about legislation and left out parliamentarians as contributors to legislation. She gave all the responsibility in her book to the executive and officials, unlike any other country in the world. But what happened is that I didn't for a moment assume that this wouldn't continue. But what did Mahinda Rajapaksa do? He abolished the Ministry of Human Rights. When I asked what had happened, I told Lalit Weeratunga this won't do. He said, no, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will look after it. Well, you know what J.L. Pires is like. You know, he wasn't interested. The secretary told me, we can't look after it. We can answer to the UN, but that's not the point. No? Human rights is not about answering the UN, it's about our people. I kept telling Mahinda Samarasinha when he was appointed the Special Envoy on Human Rights, tell the President to create a ministry. And either you take it over or tell the President, if he is a bit worried, to be the minister and make you the state minister. But you had a team going. Now, in all fairness, because of the recommendations of the interim LLRC, the responsibility was handed over to a committee headed by Mohan Pires. And I kept asking him, what is happening on this? Unfortunately, he was only interested in defense matters. He did nothing about lands that they had recommended. He did nothing about missing persons. But on this, every month I'd meet him, and the number came down between 2010 February, when I ceased being secretary and the committee was forgotten, to about September 2011, he had got the number down to 500 of the 2,000, plus some of the people had gone in for rehabilitation who had been sent to Busa and sent back. So there were only about 500. But then, again, they lost interest. So the answer is very simple. You have to have a coordinating mechanism. And I'm really sorry that the Human Rights Council is not taking this up. Bring together all stakeholders. And you will find amongst these people some that can be charged. And the point is, if you can't charge them, you must release them, because now there's no great danger of suicide bombing. That is not happening because no one is saying it. And it is shocking that this government is not doing that.
Thank you, Professor, for your thoughts. I now open the floor for questions from our journalists. We're joined by Nadeem Majid, as well as Deshan Gonavala, who joins us for the first time, one of our young reporters who's passionate about politics and current affairs. Deshan, let's start off with you.
Thank you, Sonali. My question is to Dr. Nalinda. You spoke about how there is an era where people are now fed up with politics, but you need to think that the people need to have an alternative to go towards. The JVP over the years hasn't shown a significant increase in their voter base. Now, is that because the people don't see them as what you call in Sinhala the Vikalpa Balavegaya or the alternate force? Or is it because that the JVP lack leadership that can inspire the people? Why is it that they continuously move from one party to the other, from the Greens to the Blues?
Frankly, answering your question, Deshan, always we are thinking and we are planning how to increase our vote base. By the election, I mean, during the last local government election even, we make some strategies and some changes in our political scenario. But you see, that depends on the people. I think, I mean, as a party, as a with our cadre, we can do our we can implement our planned agenda, but finally the voters who decide to make the success. And now, actually, what we are doing now is, yes, we are criticizing both these governments, especially the fundamental economic system who implemented by these two parties. Now we are forming a alternate mechanism with the support of professionals, especially professionals, entrepreneurs, and businessmen of the country. This alternative system, how to make the country, I mean, how to keep this country going forward. So in district level now we are organizing this professional forum. As well, we have appointed 10 professional committees, including the education, health, IT, environment, as such as 10 sectors. So now they are drafting practical scientific solution, and by the end of January 2019, we hope to submit it to the country as a national policy. Then we ask the people gather around the national policy to develop the country, because now we are trying to go beyond the party level as a national political forum based on this national policy. That's why that is our strategy to the election, as well as to change this current political scenario.
But Dr. Jayatis, if you look at what Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe was saying earlier, the government is essentially bankrupt. There are many state-owned enterprises that we can't afford to, and Professor Rajiv Vijayasinghe was talking about the need to really cut down on government spending, and the government, instead of doing that, is putting more and more burdens on the people. He says there's a lot of fat that needs to be trimmed in the government. The JVP has historically not been very supportive of trimming the fat. Will you be willing, let's say, if people saw you as a viable alternative, would the Janata Vimukti Peramuna be willing to introduce austerity measures within the government if necessary?
First, as he said very clearly, that we have to maintain that the production economy, productivity of the economy. It is a basic thing. Otherwise, by implementing only the austerity measures, we can't go forward. So yes, we have a big debt amount. We see that we can invest, especially with the human resource sectors. We see in the higher education, if we invest for 3 years, then we can produce the very remarkable human resource for the world economy. So we have to plan the economy in short term, long term, as well as medium term plans. In this scenario, I mean, we have to balance the import-export share. It's okay, but the main problem, what we focus is on this productivity. So we have to go for the production economy, otherwise we have no solution.
But historically, when you're doing all the planning in the center, the productivity judging by past experience and also the experiences of other countries, the productivity drops when the planning is happening at the center.
No, we have the plan. The problem is sometimes the higher ministerial levels, these officers, they plan, but it didn't continue for the grassroots level. What we can experience in our country, our political economic scenario, we didn't have a plan. We had a planning ministry and ministers, but we didn't have proper plan to implement at least continuous 5 years since 1952. So now we need a centralized plan, implementing from the top to bottom. Then we can mobilize the people, we can mobilize the enthusiastic young crowd, to the economy. So that's a basic point I mentioned is we need a proper plan with the consensus of all the, the majority political parties.
Dr. Jadis, in the north and east, the JVP's presence is quite minimal compared to the rest of the country. One might say that as much as the official opposition, the TNA, can only see the problems within those areas, at the same time, third forces or purported third forces like the JVP are completely blind to those problems.
No.
Where does the JVP stand on the issue of reconciliation, of devolution?
Until 1983, we engaged a lot of political activities in Jaffna and northern area. But during the civil war, we could go there. But after 2009, gradually we are organizing the community there. But we know that Tamil National Alliance is there everywhere. And we are the party as basically doing politics in the southern area. We put forward a resolution for solution of this Tamil community. Just after 14 days of the war ending, then we put forward a comprehensive plan how to share the administrative power with the grassroots level of the Tamil community. And yes,
is the JVP still opposed to the 13th Amendment?
Yes, because now what we said in 1987 and 88, now it comes very reality. I mean, it's very inefficient administrative system. We are for to devolution of the administrative power to gain the benefits of the Tamil people, but sharing such a political power with the top class Tamil political leaders, it shows that for last 30 years.
But Dr. Jathis, it's an amendment that has never really been implemented. So how can we say that it has been a failure when it has only been implemented in bits and pieces?
No, now you see for last 5 years, 6 years, the Tamil National Alliance is running the northern province. So are they able to solve the problems of education, even education, health problems of the Tamil people? Without police and land power, can't they solve the basic education and health and these small agriculture problems or fisheries problems in this northern province? So it's not the problem of the police and land power. So this, the provincial council system, now it makes very mess up in the administrative mechanism.
Mr. Anand Sangari, I'd like to hear your position on that, on the 13th Amendment. I mean, you were around in the political system, in active politics, when that very controversial amendment was passed. I believe you have in the past advocated for its implementation. Given what Dr. Jayatissa is saying, where do you stand on this? We're talking now about a new constitution, but that looks like a dead fish because the popular opinion, let's say, is that the current coalition government has nowhere near what it needs in terms of political clout or political capital to actually successfully pass a constitutional amendment, let alone bringing in a whole new constitution.
To start with,
so where do you stand on this?
To start with, about 2.5 years back, I met the present president, and told him to forget about the new constitution and to identify the major problems you see and find solution by amendments. I still feel that is the best way of dealing with our problem. As far as the 13th Amendment is concerned, although it is not a solution to the problem, it can come near to the solution if certain amendments are made to that. But unfortunately, At the beginning, Mr. Sambandhan went to the extent of telling, asking the Indian government to implement the 13th Amendment. He said that. Subsequently, a lot of people from his party also had been saying, asking for the implementation of the 13th Amendment in full. Now they have forgotten all that, not for political gains, they are talking about federalism and things like that. As for me, the federal solution may be the best, but when it was offered by the UNP in 2000, at the 2005 presidential election, the TNA went on a campaign asking the people to boycott the election. At a time when the Sinhalese were voting for a federal solution, the Tamil leaders were campaigning for a solution to boycott the election. If they had given support to the to Ranil Wickremesinghe at that time, he would have got even maybe even 2/3 majority. Because the difference was only about 1,20,000, 30 or 40,000. In any case, as it is today, the people are very allergic to the term federal. The Sinhalese are concerned. Although they came almost near to the federal solution at the 2005 presidential election. Now our people, by their foul mouth, you see, they had made things worse. They made things worse. So the best solution, as I see, I had been campaigning also for it for the last 10-15 years, to adopt the Indian model. Indian model in the sense, you see, one gentleman, a very, very responsible person, asked me, out of all constitutions, why are you thinking of the Indian constitution? I told him, 60 million people that live across the Pork Strait. The moment you spell out that the solution will be found based on the Indian model, like the Indian states, powers enjoyed by Indian states, 60 million people can be made to keep their mouth shut. So as it is today, 13th Amendment in full or with amendments, or adopt the Indian model, and that will satisfy the people. Because a lot of ministers, I think I met about 10 ministers. At the time I met Honorable Maithripala Sirisena. He was the secretary of the SSL. He was also agreeable for that. A lot of people were supporting it at that time.
Where do you see this current exercise with this constituent assembly in Parliament? I think the steering committee met again last week. Although why they continue to meet is a mystery. Where do you see it going?
It's a big farce. You collect 10 university boys, you see, who are doing political science. Bring them. Allow them to sit in a room for a couple of days. They'll draft a better constitution than the constitution that is being now drafted over a period of 2.5 years now. Let us not fool ourselves.
Maybe that's actually an exercise we should try out. Professor Vijay Singh, this issue of finding a solution through devolving powers and granting the right of self-determination is something that's come up several times. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa himself has supported such models in the past. There was talk of 13 plus, I believe, at one point. But right now, it seems that as the polarization of the vote base has become more consolidated, so have the views of the once liberal Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Well, let us just look at history a little bit in three areas. One is there was discussions with the TNA, and they were sabotaged. Not by the TNA. I got them to agree. Mr. Sumantra and I actually produced a draft on land powers and police powers. We actually got agreement on greater power to the local authorities. In fact, I remember Mr. Sambandhan. Suresh was against it. He said, no, you can't take away from provincial council. Mr. Sambandhan said, like you, how can we oppose a Gandhian model? But when we were moving towards it, it was sabotaged. Sajin Vasco stopped calling me to meetings and suddenly would ring me up when I was in Vavuniya and say, Machang, I forgot. They tried to leave me out and they started calling me the TNA person on the committee. But then this president put in his manifesto that he was going to strengthen local government, the divisional secretariats. He forgot that completely. He hasn't cared, Ranil hasn't cared, no one has done. Because as Dr. Jayatesha said, what you want is service delivery for the people. Now, when you talk about provincial councils, I used to be very much in favor of district councils, but once the amendment was passed, I thought we have to accept it. Although they have proved themselves a white elephant. Dr. Jayasika made the point, why aren't they doing things on health and education? When the TNA took control of the northern province, I was actually very pleased because they had two superb professionals as Minister of Health and Minister of Education, Satyalingam and Gurukul Raja. They produced some excellent proposals and plans. Vigneswaran sabotaged them and then sacked these two people because he started playing politics. Now this is the problem with provincial councils, that you're creating petty Caesars who think they have political authority. That's not the point. They must have administrative authority. And that is why I was delighted when I think the only person in government who has any ideas, Vasanta Senanayaka, has now proposed that we go back to district councils, which of course, as you know, Dadik Senanayaka suggested in the 60s. And in fact, in 81, the Tamils agreed to district development councils. The JVP actually contested those elections, but then JR put the plug by not giving them any money. So what Vasanta is proposing is actually financing not subject to the executive authority by the President or Prime Minister. And I think the plans Vasanta has proposed should go far, but as you said, this idiotic committee that Mr. Anand Sangre says is a joke. He sent them a letter, they haven't even acknowledged it. Why? Because as Mr. Anand Sangre said, the TNA is now on a trip. Having been willing to compromise in 2012, and it wasn't their fault. I still remember after we agreed on something, we got Mahinda Rajapaksa to agree to this. Nimal Siripala, GLPDs and I went. They wanted me to come. I said, you all are the seniors, you go. They said, no, you're the, in the end I had to do the talking. But he agreed. When we came out, Nimal told GL, now go ahead and draft that. And GL said, and Nimal said, the President told you to. And he said, well, if it goes wrong, it will be my head. So GL didn't draft what we had got the agreement to from the TNA and from Mahinda Rajapaksa, which was like 80% of, I think it was to do with abolishing the concurrent list, so reducing much of it. So that's easy to do it, but you need the political will and you need commitment. You also have to get rid of this idea that devolution is about political power. It is not. It must be about power to the people.
Professor, these were among the many reasons why you eventually in 2014 called it quits with the government of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and you crossed over along with the then candidate Maithripala Sirisena. You were then in Parliament State Minister of Higher Education, a position which you resigned citing interference by the Cabinet Minister, I believe, and the inability to do your job. And then come June or July, you were back with former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
No, you see, what you guys have forgotten is that although I think the situation now is very bad, I also don't blame Maithripala Sirisena entirely. He's a very weak man, but I think he's still idealistic. And when I resigned, I spoke to him. He kept assuring me he wouldn't allow me to go. But, Dayan Jayasika was right and I was wrong. When I decided to support Sirisena, even though Dayan was very critical of many things that the Rajapaksa government was doing, he told me at the end, Sirisena is okay, but he'll be dominated by Ranil and Chandrika.
Professor Vijay Singh, the manifesto
finish?
that you just mentioned, he disowned it.
Who?
The President.
He
The manifesto that you were talking about, he disowned it.
He didn't disown it.
On stage, he waved it and he said, I don't know, I didn't even know what was in this.
Well, that's certainly untrue because there were certain things we showed him. He may not have read it. It's a bit like Ms. Badranayaka, but that bit about divisional secretariats was his. There were some things that he may not have known. But then he also keeps saying, I promised to abolish the presidency. I know that Ranil put in to abolish the presidency, and I went and saw him and said, is that what you want? And he said, Eka never imang kiwwe. He wanted a reduced presidency. So he certainly knew parts of it. But, typical of most politicians, when they don't understand anything, they disown it. But the simple fact is that on these businesses in 2000 July, 15 July, Maitripala Sirisena gave Mahinda Rajapaksa nomination. And if you remember, in all the interviews I had, I said the ideal situation that we want is a Sirisena presidency with an SLFP-led government. But unfortunately, Maitripala panicked and he disrupted the campaign by sacking the secretaries. But I told Mahinda Rajapaksa, I said, "Butumaget varaddak, oyage missu kiwwa api dinnahama yawa maranawane." And you know what Mahinda told me? ඉතින් ඒක ගණන් ගන්න තිබුණේ නෑනේ. ඒ පොඩි ළමයි තමයි කිව්වේ. අපි කිව්වේ නෑනේ. I said, ඔබතුමා කිව්වේ නැතත් ඔයාට අකමැති මිනිස්සු ගිහිල්ලා ජනාධිපතිතුමාට කිව්වා ඒගොල්ලන්ට දිනන්න දෙන්න එපා. ඔයා ඉවරයි. So what I said at the beginning, they're both so frightened of each other. But Sirisena is the one who gave Rajapaksa nomination. He asked him to lead the campaign, and until 3 days before, he seemed to want the PA to win, the UPFA to win. And that is what I always said, and that is why I wasn't put into parliament, because Maitripala Sirisena people said I was on Rajapaksa's side, and Rajapaksa was told I was on Maitripala's side. I'm actually very proud, because ultimately one realizes that the polarization is what's killing this country. It killed it in February, when Sirisena wanted to get rid of Ranil, but then panicked because he thought the Rajapaksa wanted to impose a prime minister he didn't like. I told them then, and I told them before, allow him to appoint someone he likes, whom you like as well. Don't go for 100%.
All right, thank you very much. We are in conversation with Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, Professor Rajiva Vijay Singha and V. Ananda Sangri. We're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. In this round, my first question is to Mr. V. Ananda Sangri, former MP and leader of the TULF. You have been critical of the LTTE throughout, as a result of which you are subjected to death threats. Your leader, Amethalingam, is assassinated by the LTTE as well. However, in the present context, we see the amount of disunity that prevails among the Tamil politicians operating in the north and east. How do you view this?
You know, go back to the Independence Day, in Independence days, the two big parties, you see, the Tamil Congress and the Federal Party, merged, virtually merged. Ponnambalam and Chonnagam returned to the common fold, you see, and the TLF was formed. Everything went on very well. For 28 years, things went on smoothly. We were committed to non-violence, and by non-violent means we were doing whatever we could do. Who spoiled it? Who disturbed the unity? Sambandhana and Senadaraja. Senadaraja wanted to be the president. You know, people must know their limits. And backed by Sambandhan, they destroyed the TULF. And came to parliament fraudulently. You know, if everyone had forgotten what happened in 2004. 2004 was the time LTT was prepared to lay down their arms. They were prepared to run common candidates under one banner and one party. When everything was set, Sambandhan and Senaraja went to Vanni, got instructions from Tamil Chellan, not even from Prabhakaran, from Tamil Chellan, treated him as their leader, and brought back the TULF and the Federal Party 28 years after Chennagam died. You know, I was surprised today. Somebody was declaring opening a statue of Chennagam as the leader of the Federal Party. Chennagam wound up the Federal Party 2 years before he died. And now they are reviving the Federal Party 30 years after Chennagam died. So this is the trouble, no? People who are interested in positions, who are interested in power, who are interested in entering parliament are the people who are responsible for destroying the TULF, which was brought together, which brought the TULF and the Federal Party Federal Party and the All Town Congress together. We got virtually merged. I was the founder member of the TLF. So the situation we are facing today is very precarious. Very few know that the present the members of parliament who are in the TNA came to parliament fraudulently. Fraudulent in the sense, if you go through the records, 2004 election, only the Federal Party was backed, TNA was backed by the LTT, and they won 22 seats, you see. One person lost in the morning and surprisingly won in the evening. One is on the seat in the evening. Another person got 1 lakh and 20 or 30,000 votes, you see. These are the people who say that they save democracy. They are the people who bury democracy in the north. The present TNA, if anyone, this is a challenge. I am prepared to quit politics to see if anyone can disprove me. The TNA was solely responsible for destroying democracy in the north. After 2004, there was no democracy. Sambandhan won 22 seats. How? How did he win all the 22 seats? People are talking because Sambandhan, who knows about Sambandhan? I know Sambandhan more than anybody else. He was greedy for power. Backed by Sena, both of them. Still, what are they doing? Still see Sambandhan telling one thing in the morning, another thing in the evening. One thing yesterday, another thing tomorrow. This is the type of leaders we have in parliament today. The best thing is for the TNA to dissolve themselves. Go to the country, go to the people again and ask for a fresh mandate for them to come back to parliament.
I should confirm that the EU report on that 2004 election is very clear that what Mr. Anand says is absolutely true. Absolutely. It was completely fraud, and it was the LTT that brought them all in. Absolutely true.
Mr. Sangari, just like we find pockets of politicians in the south using the race card to stir up disunity among the people, do you also agree that politicians in the north and east are similarly using the race card to stir up disunity?
I don't know about the south. About the north, I can say a lot, you see. But my frank opinion is if we love the country, both these groups should get together, find out very decent, honest politicians, bring them under one banner and go to polls, you see. The biggest joke is, today you find one side of the paper, Maithripala Senaka will be our next presidential candidate. On the other side, you find another person saying from the same group, no, it will be Mahinda Rajapaksa. I told the president, you can't pass the new constitution because 10 people who are with you are in the procession of Mahinda Rajapaksa. So this will never work. No. Any person with any sense of responsibility will condemn the present attitude of the politicians, and they should agree that both these groups should go out and then come back again with a fresh mandate. Now they are only interested in building themselves. Now see, for example, some members of parliament, their pockets are full of money. How can we go and contest with them? Tax waiver of 40-50 million. 40-50 million is not a small amount. And tax waiver, not only that, no. Attending wedding. We started politics with 600 rupees salary. The monthly salary was 600 rupees. And the 75 rupees for clerical to appoint a clerk. What are the MPs doing today? So there is undue influence going on in a different way. If this happened during the election time, some people might go to jail. Fortunately, there is no election at the time for the undue influence to have any effect on the people.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Anand Sangari, for your thoughts. Professor Rajiva Vijay Singha, earlier on in the conversation, we spoke about the constitution making a process. Now, attending an event titled Implications of Culture for Constitution Building, Dr. P. Saravanamuthu of the CPA, the Center for Policy Alternatives, has said, and I quote, You can have a perfectly good written constitutional document, but the political culture that is supposed to make it function might be in complete variance to it. How accurate is that statement in the current context, taking into account the fact that we've wasted about 2 years over this document?
Well, I don't know whether they wasted it because no one has taken it very seriously. As I told you, Vasanta Senayaka sent in a very new proposal. Kadu Jayasuriya promptly buried it. In fact, Dr. Jatika said he had never even heard of it. But you see, underlying it is that I think there has been a failure to look at what are the main causes of perversion at the moment. I remember I took issue long before Dr. Jatika joined the JVP with Tilvin De Silva. Because in 1999, you may remember the probationary government, and they gave some conditions to Chandrika Kumartunga, 2001 I think it was. And what happened? They specified have a cabinet of 20 but didn't put that in the agreement and get a constitutional amendment passed. And I remember telling Tilvin, I make a kale natte. And I got the impression from him, but I may be wrong, that they didn't push it because when they came to power, they wanted to have a large cabinet. So that wasn't put in. They did the Constitutional Council. By the way, I hope people have realized the difference between that Constitutional Council and this. They said they were bringing back the 17th. The 17th Amendment doesn't allow politicians onto that council. It was only the President, the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition and the Speaker. This particular measure actually has 3 of the 7 appointees having to come from Parliament, which has been perverted further, though less so in the new one, by making them ministers. So you're actually repeating the executive in what is supposed to be a check on the executive. But one thing is the size of the cabinet. Second, the electoral system. All these extra perks for MPs are also designed to give them money. The vehicles with Mangala Samriyada rather brilliantly shutting the stable door after all the cars have gone out. Very clearly what was it done for? JR gave it to them to make money to fight elections, because on this Manapa system, you actually have to fight everybody. So, one of the things I'm sad about the JVP is instead of pursuing cloud cuckoo land like abolishing the presidency, they should be introducing measures to actually get greater transparency and accountability. The cabinet size. If you introduce a proposal, private member's bill, how can anyone oppose it? If you introduced a measure to stop all these cars and perks, how can anyone oppose it? You may not want to do it because you also take advantage of this. Not for yourselves personally, but for the party. But that's wrong, because you must stop it. Another thing that should be done, which I recommended, total transparency with declarations of assets. People are now asking for the assets of parliamentarians. In 2015, I said, put every single assets declaration on the website. Allow people to question it. Now, that is a measure you can introduce. So these are things that should be done. Now, I say this as someone who only learnt the need to introduce these, even if they are not passed. In my last 2 years in Parliament, if you look at the amendments I have introduced, both to the 20th Amendment, I'm very proud when people say, why did you vote for it? I said, it's better than the past, but I proposed 34 amendments. And they're there on record. Right. I proposed actually things like making permanent secretaries permanent, not letting the President appoint them, appointing them to the Public Service Commission. Now, these are things the JVP should be doing. Simple constitutional amendment. It will not pass, but you are bringing it before the public eye, and it's absolutely unquestionable. The trouble with the presidency is it generates a lot of discussion and everyone will fight about it. Introduce 6 measures in Parliament that no one can challenge. See what happens. That is what I think opposition party should be doing. The TNA should do the same, but the TNA is not interested in the country. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Singha. Dr. Jayatis, how are you planning on responding to the allegations made by Professor Vijay Singha that the JVP needs to do more?
No, actually it's totally incorrect. I mean, in 2001, the provisional government, it lasted only 35 days. At that time, we had 10 members in the parliament in the opposition. While sitting in the opposition, we put three main conditions to the Chandrika Bandaranaike's government. One was that to implement the 17th Amendment to form the independent commissions. Second one was to reduce the prices of 10 essential goods, including sugar, rice, etc. Then third one was the limited number of ministries. Actually, at that time, we proposed 10 ministries, but it was very difficult to pass. You know what happened? Ultimately, it increased up to 22. Chandrika Kumaratunga, she never accepted to reduce the number of ministries because she wanted at that time to at least protect the member of MPs of her side
Okay, but
in the government.
That's all in the past. That's all in
right.
the past.
In
Let's
19th
talk
Amendment.
about the
No, right.
present.
In 19th Amendment, actually we proposed that to limit the number of ministries as well as to name the ministries, because now you see they broke a number of ministries among the people. We focused on the report made by Professor S.B. Hettig of Columbia University. Actually, he made a proposal to limit the number of ministries up to 35. We discussed it,
Yeah.
but during the 19th Amendment, you know what happened. You know very well. It's very much difficult to pass such kind of attempts.
So now, but you're confident of passing the 20th Amendment to the Constitution?
Yes, but because you know who is the common candidate? What for common candidate in during the 2015 election? It's not for the limited number of ministries, and even we are capable to put the 30 number of cabinet and non-cabinet 35 to the Constitution. But Prime Minister bypassed that the Constitution statement. Anyway, we are capable to put that somewhat progressive amendment. Anyway, we have to do a lot as JVP by having 6 seats in the parliament.
What's the JVP's stance on these vehicle permits? I mean, we didn't really see a statement being issued by the JVP sort of condemning this. I mean, did you take those vehicles?
Sonali, in 2015, just after the parliament election, we proposed to the home of the parliamentary subcommittee, we will take vehicles to the parliamentary affairs ministries. Then, as we are giving official vehicles to government officers as district secretaries, we can supply the official vehicles to the MPs. Then after 5 years, we can take over to the government.
Okay.
So in that manner, we can facilitate the services of the MPs, not giving permit. But now, what for the permits? It's for to selling for nearly 25 million rupees. Anyway, frankly say that we took the permits and we purchased the vehicles. Now I am using that vehicle. We never sell the permits, even in from 1994. But if the government is willing to give the vehicle, the fuel allowance and the facilities to the ministries, the MPs, it's okay, because I think to work with the people, to give the service, we have to give something.
Thank you very much. Let's start off the questioning round. We'll start off with Nadir.
Dr. Jayatis, I have a quick question for you. Professor Rajay Vijay Singh was saying there are simple things that the JVP can do that no one in Parliament can challenge on principle. Like, for example, giving the public access to the asset declarations of members of Parliament. That doesn't even require a constitutional amendment. That requires an amendment to the Assets and Liabilities Declarations Act. Why isn't the JVP interested in doing simple things that will promote transparency and accountability in Sri Lanka?
No, I can say that during the debate of Right to Information Act, I made the speech and I proposed that why we hide this liabilities, this
Asset
declaration from the people. So we proposed that, but unfortunately by the votes of the MPs, it was rejected. We proposed several progressive amendments and the proposals, but we can talk, we can debate. Nothing happened at last.
Mr. Anandasagari, you have been in Parliament for some time, you've been in active politics for some time. Weren't these issues when you all were in office? These issues of transparency and the accountability of the elected representatives of the people, giving the public access to their declarations of assets and liabilities, weren't these issues back then?
There were no issues, no, everything went on smoothly. No. Everything went on smoothly. I don't think you can...
But if everything went on smoothly,
if you can
then
point
why are
out
we in this position now?
anything that I can comment on, I can.
Okay.
But as I see, we lived a decent life, an honest life.
Desha?
I want to take it back to something Dr. Nalinda was saying about the 20th Amendment. Now, as we have it with a president with curtailed executive powers, we already have a great deal of instability. Now, if we were to move to a purely parliamentary system, will it not put our country at great risk of further instability? Because already we have a talk of heads changing within parliament and a caretaker government coming into play. We have a significant amount of debts to repay, and we also have a lot in terms of reform, political, economic. Will our moving towards a purely parliamentary system not destabilize this process? I'd like to ask both Dr. Nalinda and Professor Rajiva this.
May I answer? Right. What we propose in the 20th Amendment, the part of the head of the state remains with the president. He will be the head of state as well as he has some executive powers. But we want to subject him to the parliament. He should responsible to the parliament as well as the cabinet. So while being the head of state, he can enjoy some powers in the military as well as appointing diplomatic persons and giving the presidential pardon. But we subject to all these provisions to the cabinet and the parliament because...
But Dr. Jati said, if the president is accountable to parliament, but who is parliament accountable to? Because we saw recently in parliament the Provincial Council Elections Amendment Act was passed. It started out, I think, as a 2-page draft. About 30 or so pages were added in committee stage in total violation of the standing orders of parliament, I think standing order 58 or 56. And no one in parliament really cared about it. Is that the kind of parliament that you want the president to be accountable to? Who is parliament accountable to?
Parliament should accountable for the people. What we propose, I mean this 20th amendment and the including changes in the committee stage is different because this constitutional amendment finally should approved by the people at the referendum. So whoever put unnecessary amendments at the committee stage, people can reject at the referendum. So somehow if we are able to pass any amendment by the referendum, then no one can change it by 2/3 majority only. That happens in the 17th amendment. We passed it only by 2/3. Then President Rajapaksa formed the 2/3 government and he rejected that by 18 government.
Professor Rajiva, you're a lot more vocal on matters such as instability. What is your take? Do you think that given the current situation, if there are sometime in the future is a situation where the Prime Minister wields political power while the President has not much even in terms of executive power, that decisions can be made? Because already under the current government, we are seeing a lot of decisions go back and forth. And it's creating an aura of instability that is contributing negatively to the whole country.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And I think part of the problem is Dr. Jatester talked about this amendment as trying to restore parliamentary democracy. But I feel the JVP, to be quite honest, didn't understand what parliamentary democracy is. Because most of them grew up, the new JVP, in a time when parliament had already been destroyed. So the older JVP didn't want parliament, they were a radical Marxist group who didn't believe in parliament. Then they joined the mainstream. You see, what are the prerequisites of a parliamentary democracy? One, it requires MPs who are selected on a sensible system, which our present system doesn't allow. Two, parliamentary systems have strong committee systems so that all members of parliament participate in legislation. We don't have that at the moment. Unfortunately, I tried to amend standing orders to this effect. My drafts are still available. When Ranil Wickremesinghe amended standing orders, none of you even commented on it properly. No one looked at the standing orders and said, how do we strengthen committees? How do we make them accountable? For instance, in my draft, I had said that if a parliamentary committee makes a recommendation, the minister must follow that recommendation or explain in writing why he has not done so. None of that is there. So you see, I don't think, our members of parliament even understand what parliamentary democracy is. I happen to be lucky because my father was Secretary General of Parliament, and as a child I used to go there and see people like Bernard Soisa, Peter Kenneman, Felix Das Pandranayaka, even George R. Wharton. They were parliamentarians who understood what parliament is. With the present bunch and with the present way of election and without any responsibilities, you can't have a parliamentary democracy. Secondly, what does the parliamentarian want today? The parliamentarian wants first to stay in office forever. This also is a result of this system. In the old days when you had an election,
I don't think he would have won even 3 seats if he had gone faced a free and fair election.
Mr. Anand
And
Sangari,
all the other party candidates were defeated now. So they are the people. The most distressing thing is Sambandhan, for all what he had done for destroying democracy in the north, had been honoured with a place in the National Executive Council.
Mr.
And that
Anand,
enabled him to come back to Parliament with, at the next election also, that enabled him to come back. Because that Executive Council had more power than the Cabinet. This is what, the people doesn't know anything, people don't know what is happening in this country. Some media is with them. Somebody was telling, I don't talk about C.V. Vigneshwaran, he was my batchmate and a thorough gent. Somebody was saying, some paper has said, I have told, it seems that Vigneshwaran should treat politics. He had no say in politics. He was a straightforward judge. I respect him for his honesty as a judge.
Yes, Deshank.
Mr. Anand Sangari, you've constantly spoken about the breakdown of democracy in the north, and you've spoken rather critically of some of the politicians that are currently active in politics in the north as well. My question to you is, as much as issues like devolution, issues like racial tensions are contributing to the problems in the north, do you think the Tamil politicians or the politicians that have established themselves are also contributing to this by putting to the fore their political aspirations over the aspirations of the people? Because the north is still one of the least developed areas in the country. And if you have money coming into your pocket, if you have food on the table, you tend to satisfy that hierarchy of needs. Right now, the people don't even have that. Do you say that the politicians are contributing to this problem?
I blame the single leaders for that.
Why?
In one election, the political party didn't allow anyone to contest, and they won. The first man got 2,000 votes. The next person got 1,300. All the other 7 or 5 got less than 300 votes, and they remained in parliament for 6 years, enjoying all rights, you see. And there was a government at that time to recognize them and honor them. Then another election, same thing. Last election, 2004 election, 22 people came in fraudulently. They didn't allow anyone, they didn't allow me even to get out and vote for me, for myself. No leaflets could be distributed, no public meetings were held. But 22 people went to parliament under the leadership of someone there. We were honoured by our leaders, singular leaders, you see, who were interested in coming to power.
Saying that people are elected to parliament illegitimately is a serious accusation. Do you see that our electoral system is so flawed that people can still manage to do so?
Of course, of course.
What do you
talking, Deshan, about 2004 when the Tigers ran that whole area and stopped anyone from voting. The EU report is very graphic about it. It's absolutely correct.
And
the
one
TNA would have got far fewer seats. Everyone knows that.
One more thing.
But that was LTT.
One more thing, some of them can't be excused for that. You know what he did at the 2002 election? He issued a manifesto saying, recognizing the LTT as the national leaders of the Tamil people and recognizing the LTT as the sole representative of the Tamil people. And they came to parliament with 22 seats. That time, 22 seats. Poor Vijayakala, there is no one to defend her. No? The offence committed by someone is 100 times worse than what Vijayakala did. Beyond that, the leadership, singular leadership should take the responsibility mainly for this situation.
Dr. Jayatissa, as you can see from what Professor Rajiva and Mr. Ananda Sangari have said, there's a serious polarization in the concerns of the electorate. It's pretty much like you're talking about issues in two different countries at this point when it comes to the south and the north. How is it that you as an elected member of parliament at the moment, a vocal member of the opposition or the anti-government sentiment, going to find a solution to problems that are essentially so far apart? How are you going to satisfy both ends? It seems like quite a mountain to climb.
Actually, we think that the change should be needed to amend the electoral system. That's a very definite solution for the political culture, because we can see everywhere the dramatic changes in the political culture. Without changing this political culture, at least by the electoral system, we can't expect parliamentary democracy, as he said, or there's a president who is enjoying his power for the people. So basic need is we have to start from the bottom level, changing the culture. By that manner, we can amend that polarization. Otherwise, everyone who got the ministerial post, they use that provisions as well as these facilities to collect the votes, not to even make the laws in the parliament. That's why what we can see in the media, that they are doing some very silly marketing programs to attract the voters, but not to make the laws in the parliament. I think they don't know even what the role of the member of parliament. So we have to educate, but I think that responsibility goes to the people. They are the people who select these representatives. So if they go a little bit forward, they can elect some of the responsible professionals to represent them.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we go in for another commercial break. We'll be right back with the final round. Stay with us. Welcome back to Face the Nation. Before starting off our final round of questioning, I must say that we urge our guests to take full responsibility for statements made by them. MTV Channel Private Limited will not take any responsibility for statements made by guests on the show tonight. This is a question sent in by one of our regular viewers, and I'd like to direct it to Professor Rajiva Vijay Singha. What is the way forward to ensure bipartisan democratic good governance, placing the long-term interests of the nation and its people first in the current context?
Well, I think a start could be made by the president, who really needs to take a stand. And while he dithered for, 3 years now, or is it four, because he was frightened of losing his power. Since he has a year more, he can be tough. Now, he said something today about the need for people to stop being corrupt. I think he should just go ahead and go through the parliamentarians and say, here are the people I think are not corrupt, and I'm going to sack the Prime Minister tomorrow and have a cabinet of only honest people. I hope he can manage 20. If he does it, the whole country will be behind him. And it's only a year, so that no one can complain too much. In fact, I tweeted it today and put up pictures of 4 people I think are honest. I was thinking very hard, are there any more? And I can think about 10 more. I put up Sunil Handunetti's name on behalf of the JVP. But people like Dinesh Gunawardena, Mahinda Samarasinha, Vasantha Senanayaka. And it's difficult to think of more. I'm sure Maithripal Siriseka can at least think of half a dozen more. That's one thing that can be done. The second is, for God's sake, listen to what Vasantha Senanayaka is trying to do, because he's got proposals to introduce district councils, cut the number of legislators, give greater responsibility and greater accountability to all of them. And since Parliament is not willing to discuss his suggestions, the Speaker has buried them as usual, I think he will have to go public with them and hope that the people will support him. I hope the JVP will, because I think they will fit in with a lot of your plans as well.
Thank you, Professor, for your specificity and for that fantastic response. Ms. Ananda Sangari, politics in the north and east as opposed to politics of the south. Unfortunately, there is discord, disunity, although this is supposed to be a united, unitary country. Practically speaking, how do you think that politicians need to come together, politicians in the north and east and the politicians in the south? How can we bridge this gap so that people will benefit at the end of the day?
People must do away with their greed for power. That's the first thing. Now, for example, I am a lawyer. The day I got elected as MP, I gave up my practice. I would have won a lot. At least gossip cases I could attend, appear and earn some money, Yeah. Up to now, I didn't earn a cent, you see, from my profession. Why? Because I am devoted to the people. I am devoted for the cause. I was brought up in that manner. Why can't everyone think like that? Why can't the politicians who come forward to serve the people think in terms of the people's benefits, not in terms of their own personal benefit? What is happening today? Someone is silent, why? A lot of things are happening, a lot of secret is buried in his heart. He won't come out, he is a very clever politician. Not a fool like me. He knows how to hide, how to earn, how to destroy people, how to destroy democracy. He knows everything. He is a talented person. But he is trusted more than me, Will you believe that the President and Prime Minister up to now, the role I played during the last 15-20 years. I lost my seat, I was hunted by the LTT. LTT was all out to finish me. Someone then helped them to destroy me in politics. Up to now, the President, the Prime Minister never invited me for a talk. No, I am the most senior politician living today among the Tamil people. I have a lot of things to tell him. He never spoke to me, he never repeated request for an appointment had not been honoured. So these are the type of people we are having at the top.
The current opposition leader doesn't really talk about issues at national level which he must on behalf of the entire citizenry, is one of the allegations or criticisms being levelled against him. Do you agree with this?
I agree fully. He's not talking about, there is a way to find a solution for everything. Everything there's a solution. Someone had not given serious thought for a solution. He wants, like the beggars boon, he wants the problem to continue. He is one of those who supported the Indian model. He is now not opening his mouth on that matter. We even to have an interim arrangement, we should accept the Indian model that is acceptable to the Sinhalese, that is acceptable to the people in Tamil Nadu, that is acceptable to the Tamils or the minorities living in this country. He is not doing that,
So what is the way forward?
Sambandha
is
was quit parliament, along with 2 or 3 others. Because they didn't get elected honestly. They didn't come to parliament by honest means.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Anand Sangri, for your final remarks. Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, continuously we've heard the Janatha Vimukti Peramuna criticize successive governments. Now, if we are to take the JVP, if there is a JVP government, how would you be handling this situation differently? What is the stance of the JVP? What is the vision of the JVP to avert this crisis that we're in at the moment?
Yes, well, we have been criticized the current economic policy of all the consecutive governments. Actually, we have passed 2 generations of politicians since 1948. Now the 3rd generation is emerging. But ruling these 7 decades of the country, what happened to our economy as social structure? All collapsed and collapsing every day. So we need an alternate policy and principles. That's why JVP is willing to form a national political platform for the interest of the country, not for the benefit of the party, not to take the ministerial portfolios in government. We can do it in any time, but we want to make the way forward the country as national interest. So that's why we are willing to collect all the ideas, policies, principles for the practical scientific solution to make this country a success.
Yeah, but thus far, people can criticize the JVP, saying that it's quite easy to criticize any government. Have you submitted any alternate proposals with regard to economic policy, women's affairs, reconciliation, national unity?
We are going beyond the criticism. Actually, you can see within next 3-4 months what is our alternate practical solution. I mean, it's forming not by the Central Committee or the Politburo of the JVP, but all the professionals, I mean experts in particular fields. So we can see and we can discuss. I think I invite all the medias that we will discuss deeply in sector by sector how to develop this country and what are the deficiencies we are facing now. So
So you're saying that the JVP is willing to formulate proposals?
Yes, and national policy.
Which you will then submit to
the people, and we can have open discussion. Then we ask the people by the next maybe the general election to the chance that people have a chance to change the government. Then we will make a power to that policy document for the implementation.
Right, okay. We've come to the end of the show, but Dr. Jayatissa, can you maybe give an undertaking over a small matter that Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh raised, putting up MPs' asset declarations on websites? Do you think, as a member of the JVP, you can maybe give an undertaking to us and the viewers that you will at least speak about this in Parliament openly?
Yes, why not? Why not? Thank you very much. I will raise that issue, but sometimes we may forget it. It's very important issue. And
raise it, introduce an amendment, as Nadia said, to the Act.
Somehow to the either
but
amendment
you will speak about
to the amendment,
in Parliament.
or otherwise we will draw the attention, and we will make it somewhat strong amendment or
because currently in the Act there's a secrecy provision.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Because we are transparent.
All right. With that, we draw to a close this edition of Face the Nation. Thank you very much, Professor Rajiv Vijay Singh, former MP, former leader of the Liberal Party. Thank you so much for your fantastic comments, perspectives.
And I
Thank
didn't
you.
say anything that MTB will have to disown, I hope.
Thank you. And also Mr. V. Anand Sangari, former MP and leader of the TULF. Thank you so much, sir, for your participation on our show, for adding value and and for the perspective you brought in. Dr. Nalinda Jayati, sir, JVP MP, we are hopeful that you would remain hopeful in Parliament and not have to go back to medicine. All right, thank you very much. With that, we wrap up this edition of Face the Nation. Thank you for watching us. Good night.